Okay, so let's go back and take a look at that greeting page that we just made. So we saved it to your website folder, your website too. We now have the navigation that goes back and forth. Again, real quick, here's that navigation, and then here's the picture that we had. We can change this a little bit, and there's some parameters in here that if you wanted it bigger or smaller, aligned in a particular way, that's all fine. I am centering my entire page. So here's an open center. Way down here at the bottom, there's the closed center. So everything on my page is going to be centered. You can decide how you want it to look and move things around a little bit. So one thing that's a little bit different here is we have a couple of things that we added to the body of our page that we haven't done before. And one is this thing called the form. This is just, I just decided that we were going to have a text box that's going to show up, and we're going to put some data in that text box, and that's going to be our greeting. That's where it's going to go. We could actually write to the page. That gets a little bit convoluted. So a form is going to be the way that we do that. It's also a way to have buttons. So I create a form. All of my forms are called FM1. And I have a text box in here. So here's an input. It's a type is text. I called it question, not a very good name, but that's what it's called. It's got 40 characters that you can put in there. And then I also made it hidden. So when the page loads, you can't see that text box. It's only after the script runs, we find out what the user's name is, and then we put everything together. That's when this thing is gonna pop up. The other part of our form is this button. So here's another input tag. This is a button, not a text box. So that differentiates between the two. The value, that's what is the text that I want to show up on that particular button. So I'm gonna say welcome or click me or whatever you might want it to say. So this says welcome. And then what happens when the user clicks on that? We're going to call a JavaScript function that's called greeting. So all of a sudden, things stop at that particular point, and it starts looking around for where's this greeting. All right, and if nothing is there, we could put that script any number of different places. I typically put all of my scripts in the head. You're going to see some web pages that might have a script inside the body. You could have a whole script that's going to be on a separate JS file, a separate file that has all of the JavaScript for all the entire web page all in one spot. And we can go out, get that particular file, and then say, oh, there's where the greeting function is, and I'll be able to run that. For our purposes, we're going to do all of the scripting inside the head. And so when there's a click, this on click says, okay, now go run this greeting function. And so it starts looking around, where is greeting? And here's up in the head, this is where I say, stop being HTML. And from my open script to my closed script, you're going to become a JavaScript file. So all of a sudden, I don't have those angle brackets anymore. And that's because this is JavaScript. It's no longer HTML. So everything in between this bit and this bit over here, that's going to indicate this is where my script is. I only have one function on this particular page. It's just this greeting. And we'll kind of break down what's happening there. So inside this, what I want to do is I'm going to create a prompt. All right. And so there's a couple of things that I can do. I can have things that might just say alert, and they're just going to pop up. And the only thing the user can do is click on, okay, that's an alert. I could have a confirm. So are you sure you want to quit? I might have something that's a yes or a no, and the user has to click on one of two buttons. And this is a prompt. So I'm going to prompt them to type in their name. Whatever they type is going to be what I'm going to store in a variable. In JavaScript, this is not necessary. it was on an older version that you had to declare this is a variable. And I think it's helpful because sometimes it gets confusing if you just start making these things kind of on the fly. Keeping track of them can be a little bit difficult. So whenever I create a new variable, I use the old naming convention, the old procedure of JavaScript. So current standards say in HTML5 and this version of JavaScript, you don't need to do that, but it can cause some problems if you're not super careful. You could inadvertently create a new variable just because you mistyped a keyword, for example. So I always set mine to a variable name. This is the user's name, so name seems to make some sense. And I'm going to prompt them what's inside the parameter. If you think about this in terms of App Inventor, in order to run this prompt, what am I prompting them to do? I could just leave it blank. And in that case, there'd be this prompt box that would come up, but it wouldn't say what to do. So I'm going to add a little extra piece of information, this string here, this phrase, and say, I want you to type your name in that particular box. Well, that's a pretty clear instruction, I think. So when I click on this, a prompt is going to come up. They're going to type their name, and hopefully they do that correctly. And then what I'm going to do is I've got this this input text box down here that I made hidden. I called it question. Not a good name. I should probably change that because it's not a question. But it is what it is, and it works in this particular case. So stay with it, and it should work for you. So it has a number of different parameters. How big is it? What's its name? And what is it? Variety of other things that I can say. But its value is what is contained inside that text box. It's blank initially. And so I want to fill it with a couple things. I want to say welcome, and then a comma and a space. And I want to put whatever they typed in that prompt, I'm storing that in this variable called name. So I want to join some text and that variable together. So we did this in App Inventor, right? So we had some text and we would join things together. You wanted it to say score, colon, space, and then the variable. Well, we're doing that exact same thing. We're joining some text and a variable together. And then what we're going to do is on this line here is we're setting the visibility of that div, that's called username, we're going to switching it from hidden to visible. And so when that runs, I'm going to do all of this stuff first. I'm going to prompt them. I'm going to put some data into that text box, and then I'm going to show the text box, and we should get a little script, all right, just a little greeting that might happen. And that's the end of my function. So there's a closed curly brace for that. And I can see where its mate is. I also like tabbing over. I could keep on hitting a bunch of spaces, or I can have everything aligned left or all cattywampus if I wanted. That would be difficult to read. So every time that I put in an open curly brace, I'm going to tab over, hit the space bar a few times, and we're off to the races. So here's my greeting, and I'm able to see nice little 3-line script that's running here, storing data in a variable, adding things together to display in my text box, and then making that text box visible. So there's my 3-line script. That's the end of the greeting. That's the only function that I've defined in this particular script. And it's all done. Let's see how that works. I always like to save and refresh. So I'll come back over here. Here's my greeting page. And there's refresh. And now when I click on welcome, there's my prompt. It's type your name, Tom. Spell your name right, Clifford. And sure enough, there it is. So here's my little welcome. Adds some text and a space. my whatever the user put in there, and we're all good. Well, what if they didn't type anything? Forget it. I don't want to do that. So they didn't type anything in there. It's just going to put nothing. All right. So it's going to say welcome and a comma and a space. And then there's nothing else that's going to be there. I could do an if statement that says, hey, wait a second, you didn't do this correctly, and to force people to go back in and through there. That may be something that we want to do on a future bit, but I think that's good enough for now. All right. So that's how to create a greeting. You've got some navigation. Here's what I'd like. Change this instead of create a title here. Actually do that. That's in my H1. Here's the H1. I can change that to say something else. If you don't want it to say return to my homepage, you want to modify what all this is going to look like, that's fine. But basically that's this page is working correctly, and I have a link that's going to go from my index page to my my greeting page, and we're all good. That's kind of cool, I think. All right. Take care. Talk to you later. Bye.